The sun was beginning its descent behind the Arizona mountains, casting a brilliant array of orange and purple across the sky. Jack Reynolds, a 37-year-old war veteran, walked with measured steps toward the local animal shelter. His boots, worn and weathered, made a rhythmic sound on the pavement, each step a reminder of the journey he'd been on since leaving the Army 2 years earlier. He had been struggling, searching for something, anything, to fill the emptiness he carried with him, but no job or therapy had been able to heal the void inside. Rex, his loyal German shepherd, had stood by his side during the toughest missions, protecting him with unwavering courage. But after a significant injury, Rex had been forced into retirement. Jack missed him dearly. The shelter, modest and unassuming, was surrounded by rusty fences and makeshift doghouses. The air was filled with the scent of disinfectant, mingling with the constant sound of barking dogs. Jack had come here at his older sister Emily's request. She believed that adopting a dog might help Jack cope with the lingering effects of war. He had resisted at first, uncertain if it would work, but deep down, something inside him urged him to give it a try. As he walked through the narrow aisles, Jack observed the cages carefully. Some dogs wagged their tails enthusiastically, trying to grab his attention, while others simply sat silently, their eyes heavy with sadness. But none of them seemed to have that spark, that energy Jack had once seen in Rex. Just as he was about to give up, a shelter worker approached him. "Mr. Reynolds," she said, "we have a German shepherd in the back that might interest you. He's a bit special." Jack's eyebrows raised in surprise. "A German shepherd?" he repeated, barely able to contain his curiosity. Without a word, he followed the young woman down to a secluded area of the shelter. In the farthest corner of a cage lay a large German shepherd, his black and tan fur dull and matted. His body was stiff, his eyes weary, as if carrying a burden too heavy to bear. Jack's heart began to race as he stared at the dog. He would recognize that face anywhere. "Rex," Jack whispered, his voice soft and full of disbelief. The dog's eyes slowly met his, but there was no recognition. No wagging tail. No excited jump. Just a distant, empty look that made Jack's chest tighten. "He doesn't recognize me," Jack murmured under his breath, stepping back as a wave of sorrow swept over him. The pain of that moment felt almost too much to bear. But after a few seconds of staring at Rex, something inside Jack clicked. He couldn't give up. Not now. Jack and Rex's emotional journey was just beginning, but where would it lead? To find out, leave a like to support their journey and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapter of their story. A tale of healing, trust, and friendship. Standing motionless in front of the cage, Jack could hardly look away. Rex, the dog who had once been full of life, now seemed like a shadow of his former self. His eyes, once full of energy, were now dull and distant, as if he had lost the will to trust. Scars from the battlefield marred his back leg and one ear, silent reminders of the sacrifices made. Jack knew all too well the pain those scars represented. He carried the same kind of invisible wounds. "He's been through a lot," the staff member explained quietly. "He was found at a smaller shelter in another state. Looks like someone gave up on him. He suffers from anxiety and doesn't trust people easily." She paused, glancing at Jack. "Do you know him?" Jack nodded slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. "He was my partner. My best friend." For a moment, Jack got lost in memories, the long hours of grueling training, learning to trust each other without words. The dangerous missions where Rex had saved his life more times than Jack could count. And the quiet nights, when the dog had been the only thing keeping him from falling apart. And now, here he was again, in front of Rex, who no longer recognized him. It felt like a betrayal in the deepest sense. The shelter worker unlocked the cage, but Rex made no move. Jack slowly crouched down, extending his hand toward the dog. "Hey buddy." "It's me, Jack," he said, his voice trembling but gentle. Rex tilted his head slightly, as if trying to understand, but remained motionless, his muscles tense. Jack's heart sank. He knew this wasn't going to be easy. The worker suggested softly, "Would you like to spend some time with him? We could take him to the play yard." Jack nodded without hesitation, feeling an odd mixture of hope and fear. In the play yard, Rex kept his distance, sniffing the air but avoiding direct interaction. Jack stood quietly, watching every move Rex made, trying to gauge the dog's thoughts. As the sun dipped lower, Jack made a decision. He looked at the shelter worker with newfound resolve. "I'm taking him home," Jack said, his voice firm. "No matter how long it takes, I'm bringing him back." There was a determination in his voice, the same fierce loyalty that had once existed between him and Rex. Jack knew that, like Rex, he needed saving. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of their healing together. The ride back to Jack's home was filled with an uncomfortable silence. Rex lay in the back of Jack's truck, his eyes fixed on the window as if avoiding Jack's gaze. Every time Jack glanced at the rearview mirror, he saw the dog's tense posture. It hurt, but Jack understood. He knew that both he and Rex carried burdens that were difficult to bear, and it would take time to heal. When they arrived at Jack's small house on the outskirts of town, he parked by the driveway and called out to Rex. But the German shepherd hesitated, his movements slow and deliberate. After a few moments, he stepped out, each movement cautious, as if surveying the world around him. Jack opened the door, leading Rex inside. "Welcome to your new home, boy," he said, trying to sound cheerful, though his voice betrayed his uncertainty. Rex entered but paused in the entryway, sniffing the air as if he expected something to happen, something dangerous. Jack had prepared a small area in the living room for Rex, a bed, food and water bowls, and a few toys. "This is your spot," Jack said, pointing to the corner, but Rex remained where he was, indifferent. Jack sighed, feeling the weight of his frustration building up. He couldn't help but remember the days when Rex would come running to him, full of energy and loyalty. That dog was different now, wounded just like Jack. He understood that kind of pain all too well. That night, Jack left the bedroom door open, hoping that Rex would feel safe enough to come closer. When he turned off the lights, he heard the soft sound of paws on the floor. Rex didn't come to him, but he lay just outside the bedroom door, keeping a safe distance. Jack smiled in the dark. It wasn't much, but it was a small step forward, a beginning. The next morning, Jack woke up to find Rex sitting near the bedroom door, his ears perked, watching him intently. For a moment, Jack felt a spark of hope. Maybe Rex was starting to remember. "Good morning, Rex," Jack said, stretching and forcing a smile. But Rex merely turned away and walked slowly back to the corner of the room. Determined, Jack spent the rest of the day trying to engage with Rex. He threw a tennis ball, but the dog showed no interest. He placed a bowl of fresh food near him, but Rex only approached it after Jack had left the room. Every attempt at connection seemed to fall flat, met with cold silence. Jack felt the sting of rejection, but he knew that it wasn't just about rejection. It was fear, distrust, pain. That afternoon, Jack decided to try something different. He grabbed an old military vest from the back of his closet, the same one he wore during missions with Rex. As he slipped it on, the familiar smell of sand and sweat filled his senses. "Let's see if you remember this, boy," he murmured as he walked to the backyard. Rex eyed the vest curiously, his head tilting slightly. Jack threw the vest on the ground and stepped back, giving Rex the space to investigate. Rex sniffed the fabric, his nostrils flaring as he absorbed the familiar scent. For a brief moment, Jack thought he saw a glimmer of recognition in the dog's eyes, but then Rex pulled back, retreating with his tail low. Jack felt his hope fade, but he wasn't ready to give up. Sitting on the porch that evening, Jack watched Rex lying in the yard, staring at the stars. "I'm not giving up on you," Jack said, his voice barely a whisper. "You didn't give up on me when I needed you most, and I won't give up now." He knew it wasn't going to be easy, but the bond between them was still there, buried beneath the pain. Jack was determined to uncover it, one step at a time. That night, he gave Rex the space he needed. He went inside and left the back door open, hoping Rex would come to him in his own time. Later, Jack awoke to the sound of scratching at the floor. He looked down and saw Rex lying at the foot of the bed, his eyes half closed. Jack smiled to himself in the dark. The distance between them was shrinking, slowly but surely. In the days that followed, small moments began to emerge, signs of progress. One morning, as Jack was chopping wood outside, he noticed Rex watching him, his head tilted in curiosity. "Want to help, boy?" Jack asked, his tone playful. Rex didn't move, but he didn't look away either. Later, while walking around the yard, Jack threw a stick, not expecting much. To his surprise, Rex took a few cautious steps toward it, then stopped, before returning to his original spot. "Ah, so you remember how to play," Jack chuckled. "You're just pretending you don't." On Tuesday, Jack took Rex for a walk. He cleaned up Rex's old ID tag and attached it to the new collar. "Let's go for a walk," he said, adjusting the leash. Rex hesitated at the gate, unsure of the world beyond it, but with a gentle tug, Jack convinced him to go. As they walked, Jack noticed Rex's tense posture, constantly sniffing the air and scanning the surroundings. "You don't need to be like that, boy," Jack said softly. "We're safe here." He knew Rex didn't understand the words, but he hoped that over time, the calmness in Jack's voice would make a difference. On their way home, something unexpected happened. As Jack was taking off Rex's leash, the dog approached and sniffed Jack's hand. Jack stood still, his heart racing. "That's it, Rex," he murmured, trying not to let his emotions show. For a few seconds, Rex explored Jack's scent before pulling away again. But for Jack, that brief moment felt like a sign. A sign that something inside Rex was starting to heal. That evening, while Jack prepared dinner, Rex lay on the rug near the kitchen. It wasn't an overt gesture of affection, but the closeness was enough for Jack to know they were on the right track. "I think we're becoming friends again, huh?" Jack whispered. Rex didn't respond, but there was something in his eyes, a softening, a recognition that hadn't been there before. Have you ever had a moment where you felt a special bond with an animal, even after all the hardships? Share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear about it. On a gray, misty morning, Jack woke up early as usual, to find Rex already awake, sitting by the window, staring out as if lost in thought. Jack approached carefully, knowing that every interaction with Rex was a test of patience. "Remember something, boy?" he asked gently, though he knew Rex wouldn't answer. After breakfast, Jack went to the back of the closet and pulled out an old wooden box filled with keepsakes from his military days, medals, photos, and letters. Among them was a worn-out rubber ball, one that Rex had loved during their breaks. Jack held it for a moment, feeling the weight of the memories, before stepping into the yard. He threw the ball to Rex, hoping that this small act would spark some recognition, some sign that they were beginning to reconnect. Showing Rex that he wasn't alone. They were both carrying scars, both of them wounded in ways that ran deeper than what could be seen on the surface. Jack didn't expect any miraculous transformations that day, but the quiet moments together, when neither of them said a word, spoke volumes. As the storm raged outside, Jack watched Rex curl up on his bed by the corner of the room, still a little hesitant but slowly finding comfort in the safety of their shared space. It was slow, the healing process, but it was happening. By the time the rain stopped, the world outside seemed fresher, the earth clean and bright, washed free of the dust that had accumulated. Rex had moved closer to Jack by the window, watching the last drops of rain fall, almost as if he was sharing a quiet moment with his old partner. "Tomorrow we'll take it one step at a time," Jack said softly, his eyes on the dog. "But I'm not going anywhere, partner. We'll find our way back together." And for the first time in a long while, Jack allowed himself to believe that, despite everything, despite the pain, the broken memories, and the uncertainty, they were both going to make it. Showing Rex that he wasn't alone, Jack quietly remained close, giving the dog the space he needed. Gradually, Rex began to relax, settling down on the rug while occasionally casting furtive glances in Jack's direction. As night fell, something unexpected happened. Rex, with his heavy breathing echoing through the silence of the room, slowly approached Jack. The dog stopped just a few inches away, hesitant but determined. Jack stayed perfectly still, respecting the dog's space. Rex sniffed the air around Jack, as if gathering the courage to do something monumental. Then, in a moment that felt almost surreal, he gently touched Jack's hand with his nose. The touch lasted just a moment, but it was enough to send a wave of emotion crashing over Jack. "You're coming back to me, boy," Jack whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He didn't attempt to pet Rex, understanding that any sudden movement might break this fragile moment. Instead, he stayed still, letting Rex set the pace. When Rex finally pulled away, Jack felt a wave of relief and hope wash over him. It was a small victory, but to Jack, it was a reclaiming of something vital, a sign that the bond they had was beginning to rebuild. That night, as the storm raged outside, Jack found Rex lying at the foot of his bed. While the dog wasn't fully relaxed, there was a noticeable change. Rex no longer seemed as distant as before, and that was all Jack needed. Proof that, despite everything, the bond between them was still there, quietly waiting to be restored. The next morning, the sun rose brightly, casting a golden glow over the yard. Jack stood on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching Rex move across the wet grass. There was something different about that morning. Rex's movements were less tense. For the briefest of moments, he seemed less like a traumatized dog, and more like the loyal partner Jack remembered. Encouraged by this progress, Jack decided to try something again. He picked up the old whistle and held it in his hands. It was a risky test, but Jack knew he had to try. 2 short whistles escaped Jack's lips, the same pattern he had used so many times before. This time, Rex responded almost immediately. His head lifted, his ears pricked up, and his body went on high alert. Jack stayed calm, showing no signs of hurry or excessive expectation. "Come on, boy," he murmured softly. To Jack's surprise, Rex took a few steps forward, eyes locked on the whistle. With a lump forming in his throat, Jack watched as Rex slowly, but with more confidence, approached. Rex stopped in front of Jack, sniffing the air around him, as if trying to remember something familiar. Jack, with slow movements, picked up the rubber ball that had been such a part of their routine. He held it in front of Rex for a brief moment before tossing it to the side. For a few seconds, Rex stood still, his stance betraying uncertainty. But then, something shifted. With a sudden burst of energy, Rex ran after the ball and brought it back, placing it at Jack's feet. Jack stood there, tears welling in his eyes as he realized just how much progress they had made. "That's it, partner. I knew you were still in there," Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. He picked up the ball again, repeating the action. This time, Rex ran even faster, his tail wagging slightly as he returned the ball. It was a small act, but for Jack it was everything. It felt almost magical. Weeks of patience had finally started to pay off. Rex was beginning to shed his barriers, slowly but surely, and that gave Jack more hope than he could put into words. That night, for the first time since Rex had arrived, the dog lay down next to Jack on the couch. His head rested near Jack's leg, and while the dog still wasn't fully relaxed, he no longer seemed distant. Jack didn't try to speak or move. He simply stayed there, letting the silence speak for itself. It was a quiet moment of reconnection, a fragile trust beginning to grow again. The next morning, something significant was happening inside the house. Rex was in the center of the room, his gaze fixed on Jack, who held a leash in one hand and a military vest in the other. "Today's the big day, buddy," Jack said with a hopeful smile. He had decided to take Rex to a special place, a nearby park that had been their favorite spot during their off days from training. It was the final test, the moment of truth to see how far they had come. On the drive to the park, Rex seemed more relaxed than he had in weeks. He sat in the back seat of the truck, his head slightly leaning out the open window, letting the wind brush against his face. Jack couldn't help but smile in the rearview mirror. This moment, after all their struggles, felt like a milestone. "Just like the old times, huh?" Jack asked, though he wasn't expecting an answer. When they arrived at the park, Jack released Rex's leash and grabbed the rubber ball again. The German Shepherd stood still for a moment, analyzing the surroundings. But this time, instead of hesitating, he ran after the ball as soon as Jack threw it. For hours, the two of them played as if time and trauma had never existed. Jack felt, for the first time in a long while, that Rex was becoming the dog he once knew. But he also understood something deeper. They weren't the same anymore, and that was okay. They had changed, but together they could build something new. In the late afternoon, as the sun set, Jack sat on one of the park benches, and Rex lay down next to him, his head resting on Jack's leg. Jack looked out at the horizon, a peaceful feeling flooding his chest. "I told you I wouldn't give up, Rex," he whispered softly, stroking the dog's head. For the first time in years, Jack felt a piece of himself had been restored. Rex wasn't just a dog to him. He was a symbol of survival and resilience, of everything they had overcome together. As they headed home that night, Jack knew the road ahead would still be uncertain, but one thing was clear. Whatever came next, they would face it together. With Rex's loyalty and courage, he had found his way back to Jack's heart, and Jack had learned that patience, love, and determination could heal even the deepest wounds. They were complete again, ready for whatever life had in store. If this story touched your heart, please leave a like to support, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to hear more touching stories like this. Your presence here truly makes a difference.